So, Dennis, Luke, good morning.
Morning.
How late were you guys out last night?
Midnight, I think.
Midnight?
Yeah, 9:30 I was in bed.
9:30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a bit of a drive home, so.
All right. I was on the 12:30 crowd too.
But I made sure I put my blue socks on.
Oh, nice. Dennis,
Nah.
can we swap them out real quick? Simon, we need a pair of socks up here.
No, we don't.
No? Here we go. There you go. They're coming in like hot potatoes. We're good. We're good. Cool. All right. Well, welcome. I think that we'll have a good conversation, but I really want to talk with kind of a broad range conversational piece, which is, as you look at the business that you guys are looking at, the ones that you're working with, the different things that you're looking at between now and the next 5 years, what are the biggest pain points that you're looking at right now?
My main work at the moment is with various retailers in grocery and convenience and things like that. And I think I'd put it down to two things. One is the changing competition, which is intense with new players, pure play versus bricks and mortar, all of that sort of stuff that's happening. Mm-hmm. The Uber Eats of the world, changing the way people think about eating. And the other thing is the changing expectation of the consumer, that the consumers are starting to expect a digital experience, a personalized experience, which is quite different to historically the way retailers operated. So I think those are the two big challenges that retailers are trying to say, how do I deal with this? How do I personalize my relationship with my consumers? How do I personalize my relationship with my team members in stores? So there's a whole heap of data and technology and mobility questions around that, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. How about you, Luke?
Well, for the courier business, it's getting tough. E-commerce is driving the delivery costs down, or the delivery price down. People want delivery for free, but somebody has to pay for that delivery. And also, we're also seeing the disruptors coming in with technology. We'll have a technology platform, and then resell, wholesale the couriers. And then we've also got the crowdsourcing that are also coming in. So there's a lot of pressures that are coming in on the bottom line, and we have to continually evolve and keep up and maybe build that ecosystem that goes beyond what the tech providers can offer.
Yeah, interesting. And I know we got to talk a little bit about this yesterday, but just to based upon those different pain points that you're looking at, are you guys looking at anything for compliance and governance around what you're doing around those different pain points today? And do you have anything in place, and do you plan on putting anything in place in the future?
Yeah, so for compliance on the courier side, so the data is really important. The customer's data, personal information is needs to be there for a delivery, for pick up and delivery. So name and address, phone numbers, email addresses. That personal information is quite sensitive, and we have to be quite protective of that. So from the Australian point of view, the APP rules are quite lax compared to the EU GDPR. So that's the most stringent. So we're trying to apply all of our compliance and governance around data on that regulation. And then, pushing forward, I think the thing about drivers and the time on the road, that's going to be the next challenging one. And, with Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane traffic, to get across town takes a long time, as everyone knows. So, that's going to be another challenge coming forward.
Still better in Bangalore, though, the traffic.
Or Manila.
Yeah, right.
I guess in retail the same. Loyalty programs, getting enormous amounts of data about people and what they purchase and how they purchase. Payments, managing payments data all of the time. In the online world, we've got people's names, addresses, credit card numbers, huge amount of personal information. So data governance and data security is a absolutely critical area. I mean, it's one of the areas I see that I think one of the most powerful people now in most retail technology organizations is this cyber chief, because he's the one that can frighten the board to death and say, if you don't give me the money, here's the risk.
Right.
And we'll generally get the funding to do whatever you need to do from a security perspective. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The dynamic of the supply chain, which you're both dealing in different ways, right? From a courier perspective, supply chain, delivery, and then fulfillment channels, right? Whether that's e-com or in the store and brick and mortars. What are you seeing around compliance around perishable items and food safety? Is that a concern? I know that, consumers all around the world and a lot of customers and partners that we're talking with, they're talking about micro moments, right? And you can lose a customer's confidence and trust.
Correct.
With something that's going to happen with perishable where somebody's getting sick or, some severe cases, people are dying, right? From food safety perspectives or perishable items in that, are you seeing any kind of compliance or accelerated in that space?
Yes, and I think it's a real challenge because the supply chains have not historically been built to manage that. So blockchain raises an interesting question here that a lot of the large organizations are looking at. How can it help them with that? How can I provide that trust by being able to show the provenance of perishable product from farm to shop shelf? If I do a recall, how can I make sure that I know exactly what I'm recalling, where it's come from, which batches I need to take out so I can give people confidence about food safety? How do I manage temperature through the supply chain if I've got things that have to be kept under 5 degrees? How do I all the way through the supply chain know that I've adhered to that? Plus, from a profitability point of view, the other way of looking at that, how do I make sure that when this thing arrives in the store, it's got enough shelf life for me to actually sell it to somebody who wants to buy it? Yeah.
Great point. That's where machine learning could come in too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Luke, are you seeing anything on your end? Are you guys handling any perishables or anything from that perspective that needs to be temperature ranged or?
We try to stay clear of that.
Okay.
We don't have
Smart strategy.
So our franchisee vans, their usual vans are not equipped for temperature control.
Okay.
So we do have some perishables, but it's the non-critical stuff like dog food. Pet Circle is one of our big customers, so we've got a lot of that. But we also do other perishable items as well. So we have to make sure that what goes in the van is compatible as well. So. It's probably lesser for our side.
Cool. Do you guys handle slabs of VB?
No.
No?
No.
Not in the back of the truck anymore?
Nobody buys VB anymore.
Daniel does.
No. We do alcohol, wine, predominantly wine.
Okay. Cool.
And the other factor in this is the consumer's expecting it as well.
Yeah.
The assumption is that we can manage that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we were at a restaurant last, Sunday night? The All Hands Brewery, and we were talking about this with Daniel last night, and I asked about what the fish and chips, what kind of fish it was, and the server didn't know, right? And so right away, my confidence level kind of dropped a little bit, and then she came back and she said is it flake? Yeah, flake. And I'm like, what is that? She goes, I don't really know. And so then my confidence level completely shot down. So I ordered the barramundi, but it turns out that's shark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is shark.
Yeah. So interesting, right? So, but I think that's the transparency, but also the knowledge that consumers want to have that trust, right?
I've actually, that's a good analogy of something I've actually been involved in, which was how do you manage the sustainability element? And one of the ones I've seen is actually doing some work with the World Wildlife Fund around Patagonian toothfish. How do you make sure that it's actually fished in the places you're allowed to fish?
Right.
And that you can capture all of that provenance
right.
for a really expensive product and prove that it's totally sustainable right the way from where it was actually caught.
Right. Everybody knows that's a Chilean sea bass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, right? Marketing, right? Brett, marketing speak. Yeah, no, that's a good point. As you kind of think about this, and I'm sure you guys have been thinking about this a lot, especially with the different business frame points that you guys talked about, but how can data and mobile strategy kind of help mitigate and or help alleviate those different business points that you have today that are problems?
Yeah, we we had a bit of a chat about this yesterday, didn't we? I think the days where you'd sit down and do this grand master plan of here's my data strategy and here's my data model for the business for the next 5 years are gone, because by the time you've done it, it's all changed anyway.
Right.
I really think it's about focusing on what are the use cases and the business priorities you're trying to address, and say what is the data requirements and the strategy and everything I need to build and the mobile strategy around that. Because in my examples, the use cases are vast and various. Is it a consumer using their mobile phone at home or in my store to connect with me? Is it a team member using a Zebra device, linked to enterprise applications that is trying to drive some activity in the store? Is it somewhere in the supply chain? I think you've really got to nail down what is it I'm trying to do here, who's the end user that I'm trying to solve for, and work backwards from there and say, therefore, what do I need in place from a data strategy, from governance, from all of those things, and just focus on what's important to you, I think.
That's a very insightful approach. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, so for the mobiles, obviously all our couriers need those mobile devices to do all the scanning out in the field, and the right choice in the device is very important. You don't want to be trying to support those guys out in the field. It's just got to work. So the rugged, we've got the TC56, so that works really well. But putting more importantly, I think, is the data. Data at rest, data in motion. It's really important to have a strategy that secures it, but also then how do you store, retrieve, report on it, and then over the top of that, I think is what should support is the information strategy that reconciles back to your business strategy. So it's trying to piece it all together in a cost-effective way that for us, so we can keep our margins where they are as well, not blowing the cost out in one particular area. So.
That's really interesting. And I know that yesterday we talked a lot about, last 5-6 years we've been talking about last mile, but now it's become last 50 feet and last 5 feet, right?
Yeah.
Where do you see kind of mobile and data strategy coming in there, and or other technologies?
Well, it's important. I think there's engaging with the receiver and the customer as well, and a lot of that is coming on mobile. So it might not be an enterprise rugged device. They've got consumer devices, and I think that everybody's got their mobile phone in their pocket now. So it's using the location maybe of the receiver and trying to locate to see if they're going to be home or not, because that first time delivery is the key for our business. If we have to go back again, we've lost money. So the key to that is, so how do we engage the receiver through the mobile device, and then maybe even link up receiver and the courier, so that take out any back office from that, so that the delivery experience is seamless for that receiver. Because it's good when it all goes well and there's no problems with that delivery, but as soon as there's a problem, there's a lot of retrospective trying to analyse where the problem went, and we in the data side we need to be more proactive about detecting potential failures and putting attention to it before it becomes a failure.
Interesting. Dennis, are you seeing anything in that space, especially on the e-com side from?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big challenges I think for the large retailers is that historically the technology stacks for bricks and mortar and for online have been built totally separately. They're not connected, and yet you're very often picking out of the same stock in a store to solve for both. So the whole data issue of how do you bring that data together to properly understand what's happening from an inventory perspective, things like that, to satisfy your customers is another real challenge that really is important to say, how do I understand the data? How do I have like-for-like data?
Yeah.
I think there's things that historically have been built completely separate. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, because I think that, especially in the grocery space, right? I mean, we're a family that we order everything either via Amazon Prime, because now they have the 2-hour delivery windows, right? Or Instacart, right? And you consistently get the updates. The challenge is that when we get the stuff, either it comes directly to us, we're the first on the route to be delivered, or we might be the third or fourth, and some of the frozen stuff is a little bit thawed, right? So I wonder if there isn't stuff in that area that's going to be, more temperature control, because those are, with Amazon Prime now they're using their own people, but Instacart's a third party, right?
Yeah.
How do you regulate that in the supply chain, as you start distributing down that workflow? Yeah, it's going to be, I think, very interesting when you
Yeah,
come to
it's a
that.
challenge.
Maybe depending on how the temperature of the goods may prioritise where you are in the run. So if you got
That's a great point.
yeah. frozen items in there,
Yeah.
or just fruit and vegetables, well then the frozen should be prioritised, I guess.
That's a good point. That's a good rule. Nathan, write that down. As you talk about, obviously you guys know that I'm a big data geek, but, with all the data that you're seeing both on the courier space and in your space, Dennis, how do you dial down the noise and really you can't sit down and look at all the data, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you dial down the noise and really find out where that purposeful data is, and how do you kind of use it to solve some of those problems?
That's a tough question. I think it comes back to the discussion we had earlier. What are your strategic objectives? What are your priorities? And you have to focus on those, because, as you say, there is just this vast amount of data, and now with all the IoT devices out there, we're potentially capturing so much data to try and figure out what am I going to do with it and what's important to me in it is a real challenge. And I think that's an area where the Zebras of the world can help, and some of the stuff we've heard about in the last day or so, in terms of if they're already capturing that data and they're already potentially building data in the cloud, can they start to provide services around telling us what we've got? Because very often we probably don't know what we've got.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
How about you, Luke?
I think that we sort of utilise partners a lot, and with the partners we try to get their expertise in the space. It's as a courier business, we're trying to focus on being a courier business. With everything that's out there, it's too much to try and digest and then focus down on something. Partners are very crucial in that scenario, but that also needs to reconcile back to our business strategy. So I think if you need to focus on where there's so much out there, is that you come back to your business outcomes and make sure that it's driving the outcomes and the revenue or cost benefit that the business is after. I think just looking at the information, data sharing is another one that we have big challenges with, and trying to locate a partner or a platform for the data sharing to exist on. There's a lot of players in that area as well. And it's I think that if somebody could come out and, like the Savannah platform, if that was a shared platform amongst all the T&L, then and blockchain is a good example of that. I think that sharing of the data is all it is. The GS1's a bit slow to the mark, and we end up doing a kajillion translations between different parties, and that's getting very challenging.
So democratizing that data through a centralized point through all the different stakeholders would be useful.
That would be very useful. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. As you look at all the different software companies out there, and then you guys both just mentioned Zebra, so thank you very much for that, for your perspectives. But how do you facilitate and gather and analyze all that data too? I mean, you just touched on it a little bit, but from that perspective, what are you doing today? And then outside of driving it across the different stakeholders, are there any different areas that you would look at?
It's evolving all the time. We've got a new partner that we're in the throes of rolling our operational system out with. For us, we need to sort of pull all the data back in and not leave it with outside software vendors. So getting access to the data is really important, and then pulling it back and then doing the analysis. A lot of times that we spend is more retrospective rather than using the machine learning. So I think getting the insights from machine learning is going to be the key for moving forward in that space.
Interesting. Dennis?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends a bit who you are. If I look at the really large retailers, they have data scientists, they have their own data lakes, they have ownership in companies that do data and analytics. So they probably say, I just need the tools to capture the data, and then I will deal with it, and we will figure out ourselves what we're going to do. But then there's a whole raft of people below that who don't have those resources, don't have data scientists. They're more looking for a service provider, I think. So they're looking for somebody not to just give them the tools, but to come along with a solution. So I think that, you'll have a whole heap of people who are looking for an as-a-service type solution with some expertise around, tell me how I do this.
Yeah, I'm curious. I broke it down yesterday in the kind of the different 4 quadrants we look at. Right, you got descriptive analytics, where this is kind of what we have. Right, then you've got diagnostic, which is this is what happened. Right, retrospective, which I think that's where you said you mostly are. Right, more of your BI, CRM type tools. Right, looking kind of visualizing the data and looking at it, getting some insights. And then, you've got your predictive analytics, right, which that's kind of leading edge. And then you get into prescriptive analytics, which is, it's on the tip of the arrow, right? And in all the different companies that, Dennis, that you're working with, kind of, where do you kind of see people on those different horizons? You got descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive.
I think most people are still at the diagnostic stage that I would see, that most of the way reporting is built in the organizations is retrospective. It's let's see what's happened and learn from it. I'm starting to see machine learning change that but it's picking the use cases.
Yeah.
I think machine learning is driving use cases where I can do some sort of immediate action. And I think that's where I'm seeing a big change, is let's look at data now, and can I make a decision that will actually impact my customer now? Can I stop myself being out of stock? Something as basic as that. Not, that's fine, let's figure out why I was out of stock 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Let's know I'm going to be out of stock and stop it happening.
Right.
I'm starting to see machine learning and those sorts of techniques being applied in those sorts of areas. But typically, again, around specific use cases that can really drive a good outcome both for the consumer and for profitability.
Yeah.
I think that use case is really important, but the technology is moving that fast. Technologists are keeping up, and we're sort of keeping along, treading water with what's going on, but the business is not there yet. Yeah. So trying to get them to understand what that new technology is and how would it benefit the business, and then pulling that back into that business strategy, it's a challenge. Trying to translate all the machine learning and AI, what that means, back to the business is quite tough.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I will tell you that I was in probably 14 or 15 conversations last night about timing, right? And you've got all this wonderful technology, and I mean, even down to the OS or the different dessert that you're using and translating to, right, with the applications, which is, the application engineers might be ready, but the infrastructure engineers might not be ready, and the business might not be ready, right? And you've got to have all those kind of in a concerted manner, right, ready to interlock and move forward. And that I've just seen so many different, customers that are in different parts of their journey with that. And I get many conversations about that. You're seeing the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. And just one more note on the on the technology. As soon as you put that in and you start to get a strategy around it, something else changes and somebody else has disrupted it. So, for business, for strategy, it's quite difficult. That whole thing around agile DevOps, you almost need to abandon a strategy and just say, okay, we'll just keep riding the wave.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any parting words from either of you two?
No.
No? Luke?
No, nothing more.
Cool. Well, Luke, Dennis, very much for your time, and really good insights. Round of applause. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.